The Messenger, The Untold Journey, read by the author, Guillaume McMartin. Preface. This story may or may not be fiction. It is about the journey of a man who changed humanity. This man was not me or you, yet you may feel his spirit in your heart as I did while I was writing. It is not for you... No, it is for you to decide if this story is real or not. I had been writing a novel inspired by my journey on my mountain bike traveling across Canada for peace, harmony and love since the winter. After writing a couple chapters, the manuscript disappeared on my computer and the inspiration vanished. I was not able to write anymore for months. I suppose the story was not heading where it needed to go. The inspiration came back a couple months later in the spring. Running around the falls like a young deer and listening to the birds singing when I was in Massey, Northern Ontario. Staying at my friend Mike's farm to help on a project with the Kicking Nelly's Crazy Acres Refuge, and going at the Little Brew Cafe and Bakery to write almost every day. The words started flowing again, and things were happening around me that inspired my writings, like being invited to attend native ceremonies, powwows, and spending time camping in the bush, and remembering all about the journey I had taken. All I have written came from dreams, people, animals, experiences, and visions that were put on my journey. I thank God, the Creator and Spirit, to have brought this journey to life that will shock some and inspire others. As I have learned to live like a nomad and with almost no money, most of the profits from this book will go to support the creation of projects I have seen in visions, dreams, and during my fasts, like a wildlife sanctuary to protect both the animals and the land, as well as bringing people from all nations closer to creation and in harmony with each other. Miigwech, thank you, merci, xie, gracias, nyawen, and danke to all the people from different nations I have met on my journey that inspired these pages. I hope I will learn to say thank you in many other languages during my adventures to come. Chapter 1. The young man woke up feeling the intense heat from the desert's burning sun. His skin was burning and peeling off. His lips were so dry and cracked. Blood could have flown from them. Yet he was so dehydrated that the blood was coagulated. A few mornings ago, after a sleepless night, he decided to leave his home, leave his comfort behind, and walk. He had been walking in the desert for 3 whole days since. He had felt like he was living in a lie for many years now, that all the people from his town were. Greed was leading their everyday lives. Slaves were traded and treated like objects. While people lived luxurious lives, others would starve. So much food was wasted by the rich, while the poor were fighting among themselves for scraps of bread. The middle class would watch it all happen, yet close their eyes. They had some degree of comfort, a place to live, and would do anything to keep it that way. Women had no rights to speak in public and were only destined to marry and give many boys to their husbands. Animals were beaten and starved, and then came the slaves, people captured during wars, people of color, a commodity who endured even worse. One day at his job as a carpenter, he saw the foreman of his employer tell one of their slaves to go hang himself, that he was worth nothing. The slave, or the foreman said, had made a mistake while building a wall for the temple that would cost their employer a month's worth of wages. The man knew it was the foreman's mistake, and he tried to defend the slave. The slave was beaten to death. He tried to appeal to his employer, yet the employer said that if he did not keep his mouth shut about this, he would be sent to jail. He told him that any slave deserved death if they were not to make their masters richer. That night, he could not sleep. He knew the imperial guards would not care about the life of a slave. He knew his employer shared the same belief about slaves as the emperor, the imperial guards, the rich, the middle class, and even the poor. Because of a difference of skin color, other races were treated as objects. There was nothing he could do about it. He had lost faith in humanity. He was ready to give up. It was on that next morning that he left his comfort for the desert. He left everything behind and started walking. He was ready to walk until the burning desert would take his life. Something he knew would happen within 3 days with no water. A traveling merchant had told him about this one day when he was shopping at the market. The merchant had been attacked at night by raiders the year before, and all his cargo and supplies were stolen. He was about to die after 3 days when another merchant passed by and offered him water, which saved his life. He was brought back to town and decided to open his shop in the market. The desert was just too dangerous. The first 3 days walking through the desert had been rough for the man. Even as he was walking to die, his body was asking for food and water, something he had never lacked before. Every dune he climbed, he hoped an oasis would show up on the other side. The sun burned his skin during the day, and during the night he would freeze. The sweat that used to run down his back and his forehead was absent now. He was exhausted from the sleepless frozen nights. He was unable to walk, to stand up. A flock of vultures never stopped flying over him in circles. Finally, he felt death was coming. Everything would be forgotten. The nightmare would be over. Suddenly, he felt a presence around him. He felt immense love in his heart. He felt it was not over for him, that he had a purpose, that he was not to give up and would have to find what that purpose was. He was told to walk west, and the answers would be given to him. And so he did. Chapter 2. The man stood up with hope in his heart. He felt dizzy and his body was aching, yet now he wanted to live. He would fight to stay alive. He started walking. He needed to find water, food, and shelter for the night. He decided to climb on top of the tallest nearby dune to be able to see the horizon. He was so exhausted, yet the hope in his heart gave him the power he needed to reach and ascend the gigantic dune that stood in front of him in the distance. It took him almost 3 hours to reach the dune. He had thought it was much closer to him when he decided to walk towards it. Standing in front of it, he realized how small he was compared to the desert. The mountain of sand was so gigantic, it had looked much closer than it really was when he had set his eyes on it. From a glance at the summit, he thought there was no way he'd be able to ascend. But his heart was telling him to climb. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The first few steps were hard. The sand burned his feet and the angle of the slope was high, so he would slip backwards as he climbed. As his feet slipped backwards and he fell face first on the sand, it took all his strength to get back up and crawl upwards. He realized that using both his hands and feet to ascend made the climb much easier, even if the sand was burning his hands as well now. After what seemed like an eternity, he looked upward and backward and realized he had climbed at least half the mountain. He smiled, proud of his accomplishment. Even with his eyes covered by a mix of sweat and sand, he could see a bald eagle flying over him. He felt this as a sign he was to keep climbing. He decided he would keep that pace until he had reached the summit, and so he went. When he reached the summit, it took a few minutes laying to catch his breath. He could feel his entire body burning on the hot sand, and the burnt flesh under the peeling skin from the sun. As he took all the energy he had left to stand up, he saw everything in the distance around him. He cried. It was majestic. He could see the city where he had lived alone with his mother for the past 4 years in the distance. On the other side he saw dunes, thousands of dunes. The scenery was beautiful, yet he felt a little sadness. All he could see was dunes. He had hoped to find an oasis from the top of the sand mountain. He had hoped God would save him. He fell on his knees again and cried, yet no tears came out. He felt abandoned. He felt he had just gone through all this suffering for no reason. The sand in his eyes was burning. His skin felt like he was being cooked in the sun, like he was being burned alive. At that moment, he lost consciousness. He woke up and felt the wind on his skin. He felt humidity on his face, and although his eyes could barely open, he realized he was flying through the clouds. He wondered if he was being transported to the heavens. Once he could open his eyes fully, he looked up and saw the bald eagle was carrying him. He murmured, "Thank you," as he felt great peace from the eagle. He lost consciousness again. Chapter 3. He woke up in the most beautiful oasis he had ever seen. There were animals drinking on the other side of the pond, animals he had never seen before. The trees were not trees from the desert. He felt he was being transported to another world. Was that what paradise looked like? He stepped into the pond and felt the softness and comfort around his feet as they sank into the soil. He thought that's how the rich must have felt when they went at the Roman baths. The water was cold and the soil felt different from the sand he was used to. He was in contact with mud for the first time of his life. He felt bliss. He felt connected to the ground, the animals and the trees he had never seen around him. He thanked God and prayed this moment would never end. He looked at the strange birds floating on the water and wondered how they could do it without flapping their wings. He was surprised to see one go underwater and come up with a fish in his beak. His skin was still burning from the desert sun. He still had open burn wounds covered in sand. He felt that strange birds were telling him to dive underwater, that he would find food and healing there. He had never swam when he visited the oasis in the city, yet he felt courage and put his entire body in the water. The fresh and cold water from the pond felt good on his open wounds. He could feel the life force of the water around him. He felt peace. He tried opening his eyes, and even though his vision was blurry underwater, he could feel the sand being washed from his eyes and his wounds. The fishes around him were curious and came to investigate. A strange black creature that swam like a flag in the wind came to his wounds and lay there. Dozens and dozens more came and covered his burn wounds before starting to transport him into a grotto underwater. He wanted to reach the surface to take a breath of air, yet he did not know how to swim and had no control over his body. He lost consciousness again, only to wake up inside a cave surrounded by crystals. A ray of light came from an opening in the ceiling down into the crystals, and the light was redirected all around the walls. His burn wounds had disappeared, thanks to the cold water from the pond, along with those strange creatures we know as leeches. A fish jumped out of the water to land at his feet. He had a meal. He thanked God. Chapter 4. He was feeling so at peace that he felt as if he had gone back in time and was now a baby again, held by his mother's arms. He prayed for 3 days and nights to give gratitude for all the things that were brought to him. After eating the fish that jumped to him and admiring the lights on the walls, he decided to explore the cave to see if he could find a way out. He knew the great eagle had brought him there for a reason, yet he was unsure why and was going to find out. After a while searching, it seemed the only way out would be to go back in the water, back through a tunnel and find a way to the surface. He was afraid, as the waters were dark and he still didn't know how to swim. While sitting on the rock floor where the fishes had jumped, he put both his feet in the water and was about to go in when he saw a small ray of light coming from an opening in the stone wall. He managed to squeeze through the crack, arriving at a room illuminated by a stream of lights coming through a gigantic crystal. Behind it, he found a small tunnel covered by crystals that redirected the light coming in through the end of that tunnel. As he managed to crawl out, he smelled the humidity from the moss around the trees. trees that had strange long green needles and smelled fresh and good. An animal looking like a mix between a huge camel and a horse, with pointy large horns that looked like trees growing from its head, was eating those needles, and he felt the animal was telling him to eat them. They were a little bitter, yet he felt quite energized after eating them. He had just met the moose and a young white pine tree. He thanked both of them and walked. The bushes were thick. There were plants and trees all around them. He had never seen something like that before in the desert where plants were rare. As he could barely move forward from the thick bushes, he felt lost. He took a moment to breathe, close his eyes and listen. As his senses were getting clearer and his eyes closed, he started to feel a gentle breeze on his face. He heard all the different songs that the birds and the insects were singing. He felt harmony. He felt peace. He felt great love. He heard a song in the distance, something he had never heard before. He felt compelled to go look for the source of that beautiful song. The closer he got to the singing, the louder the song would get. It was such a majestic song, so graceful, yet so wild. As he managed to go through a couple bushes that were standing like a wall between the song and him, he saw beauty. Chapter 5. He saw the waters flowing. The waves created when the water hit the rocks. In the desert, water was as precious as gold. In this paradise, water was abundant. There seemed to be an everlasting flow of it. He saw large fishes jumping out of the water and trying to climb a waterfall. He saw a large brown furry animal trying to catch one of those fish with his paw. All he had seen before was stagnant waters at the oasis. Everything here was moving. Everything was alive. He was alive. He was in bliss. He thanked God. As he looked around, he realized it would be much easier for him to walk alongside those rapids than to walk through the thick bushes in the forest. As it was quite a climb to reach the top of the waterfall, and as it seemed that this large animal was guarding it, he decided to head down the river. He thanked the guardian of the waterfall and the waters before leaving. The further he went downstream, the calmer the waters got. It seemed like the current that had fought a hard battle with the rocks upstream and was now resting peacefully. The river flowed nicely here. More of those floating birds seemed to just let themselves be transported by the current. He wondered if he could do the same one day. He had heard of incredible stories from traveling merchants in the desert, of large floating vessels transporting merchandise across the sea. Stories of fishermen on their small boat at sea before sunrise to catch fish to sell at the market. Stories that the people of the desert could hardly believe. He had even heard one story of a fisherman who was out at sea when the storm came while he was focused pulling his net full of fishes in. The moment he got the net in the boat, a thunder blasted through the sky covered in black clouds. The wind rose and the waters became angry. Huge waves lifted the boat and almost had him capsize. The fisherman prayed and prayed and prayed until he fell unconscious from being knocked down by a huge wave that crashed onto his boat. He woke up the following morning on a calm and peaceful sea with a beautiful sunset. He got back to the land and started telling everyone who would hear him the story of how God saved him from drowning in the sea. A story that had spread from mouth to mouth to the desert. It was an incredible story for a man from the desert. Yet he believed it and knew from the sandstorms how strong the wind can be. If it could move dunes, it could surely move the waters. While thinking about how God had saved this fisherman just like God had saved him in the desert, he heard the sky roaring in the distance. Great clouds were coming over towards him. This time he saw a flash in the sky, the lightning coming down from the clouds. He had seen thunderstorms before in the sandstorms. They were the greatest force of nature he had ever seen. He knew the powerful winds were coming. He knew he had to find shelter quickly. As he headed down the river, looking for a large rock to hide under, he could see the flash of lightning behind him and the thunder roaring just a few seconds after the flash. The storm had caught up to him. A white bird with long legs came flying over him, squawking to tell him to get to safety quickly. As he was jumping from rock to rock, he found a large one that was sitting between two others. This would have to do, he thought while crawling under the rock. The powerful storm arrived. Chapter 6. He saw the lightning split a tree in half just across the river from him. The wind was blowing in all directions, and the rain was hitting his face so hard it felt like arrows piercing his skin. He managed to move just enough to put his face between his legs to protect it from the rain while sitting. The rain was so cold on his skin, his body was trembling. The rain had become solid and was dropping on the ground heavily as little white balls. His body was getting much colder than during those cold nights in the desert he had experienced before. He remembered the fisherman at sea during the storm and how only prayers had saved him. So he prayed. He thanked God to have brought him to this majestic place. He thanked God for all the fresh water around him that he could drink and that gave life to all the trees and plants in the forest. He thanked God for all the mysterious animals that he had seen and that had guided him since he had regained consciousness after being transported here by the great eagle. He thanked God for all of creation. He told God he would do whatever he wanted him to do, that he was ready to die for him if that was his will. He surrendered himself to God. The storm continued for a few minutes until he saw light in the distance. The sun was shining through the clouds as the wind was calming down. The rain got calm. The thunderstorm was getting further away. He prayed again to thank God as he was still shivering. His body temperature had really dropped. He saw the steam coming out of the water and the birds coming back to float on it. He felt it was a sign that the waters were inviting him in, and he managed to crawl to it while shivering intensely. He felt the warmth on his body. He felt the same comfort he would feel when sitting around the fire at night in the desert. He felt God's grace. He felt God was holding him in his arms to warm him. He cried. He felt so alive. He wondered if this was the afterlife, if it was paradise. While enjoying the warm embrace of the waters, he didn't realize the current had brought him a long way down the river. He had been transported along with the floating birds to a very large body of water where he could barely see the other side in the distance. Trees had grown in the middle of the body of water, and he wondered how they could have done such a thing. The water was shallow enough for him to walk out to a beautiful sandy beach where the river had become a lake. The comfort of the warm sand made him feel at home, so he decided to lay there in the sun and take a nap. He had vivid dreams of the great eagle coming to him to bring him a message of peace, harmony, and love, and ask him to share it with the people he would meet on his journey. The great eagle took flight towards the sun as he watched him disappear until the sun was too strong for his eyes to watch. He woke up abruptly when a loud sound resonated in his ears. Chapter 7. A large raven was standing next to him, squawking. It took off and flew towards the peninsula at the end of the beach. The man felt the raven was guiding him, so he followed the path he was being led to. When he arrived at the end of the beach, he looked around the trees and the big rock guarding the peninsula. He saw people coming towards him in a small floating vessel. It didn't quite look like the image he had made up in his mind about the boats when the traveling merchants had told him stories of fishermen at sea. He wondered if either the raven had sent those people to him or if it was guiding him to those people. The people were approaching at a rapid speed. As they got closer, he saw there were two men wearing what seemed like animal skins with bones and jewelry. He had seen those tribes in the desert wearing similar clothes, seen some tribes in the desert wearing similar clothes before, yet those men's skin was a different color. It had somewhat of a red tint in it. He heard them singing in the language he didn't know. The raven flew to them and landed on the side of the vessel. He felt the raven had told them a stranger was laying on the beach and wanted him to go meet them. He knew he was not in danger. As the men got to the peninsula, they spoke to him. "Ani bonjour," they said in their strange language. He could not understand. They were smiling, so he knew he had nothing to worry about. He smiled back at them. Their hearts were warm. They got out of their vessel and came to hug him. They told him many things, yet he had no idea what they were saying. They had so much to tell him about the visions their seer had had. They had to tell him about the prophecies of a traveler from across the oceans that would come live with them for 4 years. Yet it seemed like the traveler did not understand their language, and they wondered how they would communicate. Signing with their hands, they invited him to join them in their canoe so that they could take him back to their village. It was the first time he had ever set foot in a boat, and the canoe was not the most stable vessel, so he lost his balance and fell face first in the water. The two men quickly helped him up, and when they saw he was okay, they started laughing. He felt at home, even though he had no idea where he was. He had not laughed for many years. Chapter 8. He had had a somewhat normal childhood, from being born in a poor family in a small village of Galilee and moving to a bigger town in Egypt. His father was a carpenter, and as it was common, his father took him to work for him when he was still young. His mother was a loving mother and had always taken great care of him. He was a only child. There were some rumors in the village about his family, yet he had never paid attention to them. Growing up, he didn't have many friends, and by starting to work for his father at a young age, he didn't get the chance to play with other kids. Once he turned 15, his father injured himself working on a piece of furniture for a client. Infection set in the wound, and he passed away a couple months later. It was hard for his mom and himself, and that's when he started to work double time for a construction company. As he spent all his days from before sunset to late evenings working to help his mother, he never had a chance to laugh. The company he worked for was hard on their workers and brutal on their slaves. It was on that day, when a slave was beaten to death, that he had decided to leave this town forever. He was then 20 years old. Chapter 9. At the moment, while laughing with the other two men, he felt joy. He felt alive. He felt like he had found what he had always looked for. The men helped him get back in the canoe by holding his arms until he had sat at the bottom. He felt loved and cared about. He felt good. The men pushed the canoe further into the lake and hopped on. They paddled efficiently, facing the small waves. The raven was flying next to them at the same pace when they were moving forward. The man felt a little sick. As he had never been on a boat before, it reminded him of a story of a traveling merchant who had crossed the sea to go get his wares and got so sick he fainted and woke up the next day having missed the whole trip. He fought the feeling of sickness because he wanted to see the majestic views of nature that were standing before him. A cliff stood in the distance before them. On the face of it, you could see some kind of face that looked like one of an elderly woman. The men pointed and said, "Old woman be, no kumis," in their own language. He wished he could understand them. No kumis, Jesus, no kumis. Further on their trip, the raven that had been flying next to the canoe this whole time flew away towards the shore. The men pointed at a cliff where a man seemed to be painting symbols. The raven landed on his shoulder. The man at the front of the canoe yelled, "Ani bojo!" to the man painting the symbols. Who waved back at them. It was the same thing they had told him when they had first met. He assumed it was some form of greeting. They traveled for a couple of hours, and he saw some amazing sights. They passed a large bay followed by a river, and after a while, he saw smoke from a fire in the distance. The men called it bawating. They kept traveling at a great speed, even after fighting waves after waves and traveling such a long distance. He found the strength and the endurance of the two men paddling quite remarkable. He could see the village appearing in front of his eyes in the distance. As they approached, he saw hundreds of people waving at them. It seemed like all the people from the village had assembled on the beach to welcome them. Their houses were not so different from those he had seen from the tribes in the desert. The hearts of the people welcoming the traveler were filled with joy. They knew the first part of the prophecy had come true. Chapter 10. The people helped him get out of the canoe, and the elders were first in line to offer him a hug. One after the other, all the people from the village gave him a hug and gifts. The villagers spoke nice things to him that he did not understand. Some were smiling, while others were crying. Someone put a fistful of scented herbs in his hand, which he later learned was called the sema, or tobacco. Some gave him eagle feathers. Some gave him animal furs. Some gave him wildflowers and dry plants he had never seen. Their hugs felt pleasantly warm. He felt an incredible love. He cried. He felt he had found a home. He had found his people. He had met the Anishinaabe people. A feast had been prepared, and he was invited to come by the fire. Someone showed him to put an offering in the fire with the tobacco and the cedar. Before the ceremony, one of the men who had come to get him in the canoe put on a headdress covered in eagle feathers and carried a staff with the head, feathers, and claws of an eagle. The man from the canoe rose his voice and spoke to everyone, and he understood that this man was the chief. The chief then played his drum and sang a song. Many people joined in singing and playing their drums and shakers. Hey, hey, ho, hey, hey, ah, hey, ho, hey, hey, ah, hey, ho, hey, ah, hey, ho, hey, ah, hey, ho. He then passed an eagle wing to an elder sitting beside him, and the elder spoke. The wing was passed around from elder to elder for them to speak. Both men and women had the chance to speak here. It was beautiful to see women being treated equal to men. The wing then came to him. The elder sitting next to him pointed his mouth and made it clear it was his time to speak. He didn't know what to say and had never spoken in front of so many people, except this one time at the temple when he was young. He was a bit timid. He took a deep breath and introduced himself. My name is Jesus of Nazareth, son of Joseph and Mary. Chapter 11. He told them about his journey in the desert and how the great eagle had come to save him when he thought he was dying. He told them, the great eagle had told them he would go on a journey for peace, harmony, and love. He told them how the animals had helped him since he arrived in this place and how he thought it was paradise. Everyone was listening, even though no one could understand a word he was saying. When he was out of things to say, he nodded his head and shrugged his shoulders. The people laughed and cheered. Some people made animal sounds. Oh, oh! He felt loved. The ceremony continued. Berries were put in the fire by the elderly women, along with water from a copper cup. He did not understand the words that were spoken, yet understood that this ceremony was to honor the fire and the food. He did not know if they believed in his God, yet he was certain they were praising some sort of God or spirit. The food from the feast was given to the fire and then distributed to all the people. He tried to get up and help, yet the elderly woman sitting next to him put her hand on his shoulder, nodded her head, and smiled. He understood she was telling him to stay put. He was the honored guest. He didn't know it yet he was the traveler from across the ocean that would bring peace to the nations of Turtle Island that the prophecy had announced. Chapter 12. The feast was delicious, and he tasted things that he had never tasted before. The meat was so tender, it melted in his mouth. The vegetables tasted and looked different than the ones he was used to in Galilee. The fish was perfectly cooked. The food was full of colors. He absolutely loved the berries, which were sweet and maybe a bit sour. What a delicious meal he had been served. He thanked all the people that came talk to him during the feast. They could not understand each other, yet their hearts connected to his, and he could feel their energy. Many people told him miigwech repeatedly while holding his hands. And as he was thanking them himself, he assumed it meant thank you. He was beginning to pick up some words from this foreign language. It was getting late. The children were falling asleep. He was yawning. The elder woman sitting next to him said something to a young woman that was close by and gave him a sign with her hands to follow the young woman. He said, miigwech. The elder woman smiled. He stood up and followed the young woman who was carrying a torch. She led him to a small dome tent made of animal hides. The young woman lifted some of the hides and showed him he had to get to his knees to enter. Inside, he saw the dome structure consisted of small, intertwined trees attached with some sort of string. Animal hides were laying on cedar branches on the ground, making a comfortable-looking bed. He fell asleep within minutes after thinking about all that had happened during the day. The cave he had prayed in for 3 days, the tunnel filled with crystals that took him out of the cave, the strange animal with trees on its head, the thick bush, the thunderstorm that got him so cold, the warm river carrying him to the lake, the sandy beach, the raven, the 2 men in the canoe, their unknown language, the face of the old woman on the cliff, the man painting on the rocks, the smoke in the distance, the village, the people, the gifts, the feast. It felt like he was in a dream. That night, the great eagle came to see him in his dreams. He told him he had brought him there for a reason he would understand after many moons had passed. He told him he was far, far away from the desert and that in 4 years he would have to leave even though he would want to stay. The great eagle taught him the Ojibwe language, told him that the Anishinaabe people had many teachings for him and that their prophecies had told him he would one day come. He told him he had something very important to do for them in return for the teachings they were to give him. The great eagle turned around and flew into the moon. Jesus woke up in the middle of the night with more unanswered questions than he had had before. Chapter 8. He was thinking about all the great eagle had told him. He could not fall back to sleep. So he crawled out of his dome tent and saw green lights in the sky. They were absolutely gorgeous. It looked like some sort of luminous spirits were dancing in the sky around thousands of stars. The luminous spirits transformed into a moose who told him he was being protected, that the animals in the forest were looking over him since he had set foot on Turtle Island. The moose transformed into a raven who told him to follow the animals from the forest, that they were guiding him. The raven transformed into a bear who told him he would be a healer, that one day he would heal people's hearts and bring peace between the people. The bear transformed into an owl who told him he would have to be courageous, that one day people would hunt him down. The owl transformed into a crane who told him one day he would lead, that the people would follow him. The crane transformed into a wolf who told him to look for the sacred fire. The green lights slowly disappeared and left a clear sky full of magnificent shining stars. He looked around and saw the fire from the ceremony was still going strong. He walked towards it and saw a man was still sitting next to it. The man by the fire looked at the man from the prophecy, walking towards him, and smiled. The fire had told him he would come. They shared a silence together for a while. Then the man by the fire showed him the 2 wooden bowls with cedar and tobacco and made him a sign to put them in the fire. Jesus made his offering and prayed. The man by the fire was the first to speak. He said that Grandmother Moon was watching over the traveler. He said that she had been watching over him since before he was born. He said that all things were connected, that the sky was his friend, that the water was life, as all living things were brought to life by the water. He told him of when the Creator had created the world. He told him how the world was covered in water and how the animals from the sea met and decided to send a turtle to the bottom of the ocean to collect the soil. He told him how the land grew on the back of the turtle when it came back to the surface and became Turtle Island, where all life was created. He told him how the Creator had made 4 men, the red man, the yellow man, the white man, and the black man. He told him how the Creator gave different powers to the 4 men. The black man had the power of rhythm and dancing. He was very strong. The red man had the power of community and spirituality. He felt close to the Great Spirit. The white man had the power to control the fire, the strongest element. He felt very smart. He was very smart. The yellow man had the power of systems and to reproduce things. He had a strong heart. He told him how the 4 men were friends at first and that they ended up fighting over shiny rock which separated them and brought war between them. He told him that if the 4 men did not make peace, all of creation would end and the Creator would start a new one. He was looking at the fire while he told them all those things, and sometimes would get up to add wood and offer tobacco and cedar to the fire. He told him this fire was the sacred fire, that the sacred fire cared for the people, that the sacred fire spoke to people's hearts, and that it healed them. He told him he was the fire keeper, that his role was to tend to the fire so that it kept watching over the people. Jesus listened carefully as he put the words together in his mind to understand this new language. When the sun was rising, the man by the fire told him he didn't know if the traveler understood what he had told him, yet he knew his heart was listening. Jesus told him thank you in the old man's language, miigwech, and tried to formulate his first sentence to tell him about the dream he had where the great eagle had brought him a message and how he had taught him the language. He also told him how the animals in the stars had come to deliver him messages. The firekeeper cried. He had had dreams of the great eagle for years, telling him someone who spoke to animals was coming. He rose up from his seat and gave a hug to Jesus. He couldn't believe the traveler could speak his language. Chapter 14. When the people started coming out of their dome tents, that the firekeeper had told them were called wigwams, to come to the sacred fire to pray, they were all surprised to hear the traveler respond to their words. The night before, he did not understand them at all, and today he could converse with them. They quickly went to get everyone so that they could hear the story of how the traveler from across the sea had come to them. He told them the story he had told the day before, in their language this time, and people cried at the horrible treatment of the slaves in his town and cheered when he told them the great eagle had flown him to this much different land than the desert he knew. Oh, oh! He told them about all the animals that had helped him since his arrival and the waters that had healed his wounds. The people from this land understood. It was normal for them. They lived in perfect harmony with what they called their mother, or Mother Nature. Elders came to hold his hands gently and pray with him. They gave him many teachings about the animals, the plants, and the way of their people. They told him that their mother always provided for them and that they took great care of her. They told him about the Creator and how they thanked Creator in all that they did. They told him that they would soon teach him their songs to honor each living creature on their land and to honor all of creation. They told him they would teach him the medicines that the land grew for them. They also told him about the wars between certain tribes and that they prayed for peace every day. They told him the Anishinaabe were known among other tribes to be the medicine people, the healers. They told him that there were many other tribes all over Turtle Island, that he would meet them along his journey. They told him about the prophecy of a traveler from across the ocean that would come and visit them for 4 years, that he would feel so much at home that he would not want to leave, yet he would have to go back. They told him the prophecy said the traveler would bring peace to all the people. Only a couple of weeks earlier, learning all this would have been overwhelming. Yet in this moment, he felt God, the Creator, was with him at every step. He was given so many teachings that day that the sun had gone down already when the chief and his partner came to talk to him. The chief's partner was a seer and had told the chief of the arrival of the traveler from the prophecies. The animals in the trees had whispered of his arrival to her. The chief had immediately embarked in his canoe and with his oldest son to go get the traveler. The chief told Jesus about the fights between the tribes on Turtle Island, about what the cranes had told him about the peace that was coming and that he would have an important role in it. He told Jesus that the crane had told him he would have to help guide the traveler, share with him the knowledge of his people, and that the peace would only come through collaboration between the tribes. He said he would bring Jesus to the sweat lodge the next day with the medicine man so that the spirits would come meet the traveler. He said that the grandfathers and grandmothers were excited to meet him. The chief's partner asked if the lodge, the dome-like tent they had built for his arrival is convenient, and Jesus said it was perfect. They brought him back to the lodge and wished him many dreams. The chief's partner showed him the dream catcher she had made and attached to the ceiling of the lodge while the chief and her son were paddling with the traveler. She told him it would bring him vivid dreams and would guide him on his journey. He knew she was speaking the truth, as the great eagle had come to visit the night before along with all the spirit animals in the night sky. Chapter 15. That night, the spirit of the grandfathers and grandmothers came to visit him. They blessed him with their love and told him they were thankful he had come. They told him they had always been by his side. They told him that what he had seen and felt with the slave on that day was the sign he needed to start his journey. That this event had started a chain of reactions that would transform all of humanity. They told him they would come back to visit during the sweat and that they would bring powerful messages to him when the time was right. They sang many songs with him to thank Creator, the ancestors, the strawberries, the bear, the wolf. Geche manido, geche shenan, geche nan, geche manido, wedo wedo we, hey wedo wedo we, wedo wedo we, hey waedo, wedo wedo hey, wedo wedo we. He woke up and felt a loving energy that started to vibrate around him. He crawled out of the lodge. Even though it was completely dark inside, the sun had already risen outside. A large fire was being well fed by the firekeeper just in front of his lodge, and he wished Jesus a wonderful morning. He told him to head to the sacred fire from the ceremony. A couple elders and a chief were sitting around the sacred fire. They welcomed the traveler and told them the grandfathers and grandmothers had asked to bring the traveler to sweat with them. The elders and the chief walked back to the lodge where he had spent the last 2 nights. They explained to him it had been the spirits who told them to build this lodge there, and that they would use it to sweat after the spirits had visited the traveler in the lodge for 2 nights. Jesus saw the firekeeper turn burning red-hot stones in the fire. The chief told him those were the spirits of the grandfathers and the grandmothers that were coming to visit through those stones. All made an offering of tobacco to the firekeeper. The elders crawled in the sweat lodge one by one. Jesus was asked to come in after the chief and sit next to him. The last person to come in was an elder who closed the circle. The man sitting next to the doorway asked the firekeeper to close the entrance. It got totally dark. The man sitting next to the doorway started speaking, as he had been asked to lead the sweat. He gave many teachings about the sweat and the spirits. The elder responded with sounds of acknowledgement. Oh, the man who led the sweat seemed to be a very wise elder. He then asked the firekeeper to bring 3 grandmothers inside. The firekeeper lifted the gateway, eyes, and brought in the grandmothers, one after the other, to put in the hole in the dirt in the middle of the lodge. The leader asked the people in the lodge to put the sacred medicines on the stones to bring in the grandmothers and the grandfathers. The powders burned with little sparks. Ani miigwech was said for each grandmother and grandfather that was brought in. The sweat leader asked the firekeeper to bring in the medicine and water and to close the doorway. The darkness came back while Jesus could only see the red burning stones. The leader poured some of the medicine water from the big pot on the stones. The lodge got filled with thick burning steam. The traveler could barely breathe. The leader gave teachings about the grandmothers and the grandfathers visiting. Jesus could start seeing things appearing from the stones, even though they were in total darkness. What he saw was surreal. Chapter 16. Visions appeared in front of his eyes. He saw the fish swimming and jumping out of the water. He saw the seagull fly next to the fish. He then saw the beach in the distance. The leader finished the teaching and asked the firekeeper to bring 6 more grandmothers into the lodge. The stones were brought in, cleansed, and the same offerings were made on the stones to bring in the grandfathers. The medicine water was brought in again, and the doorway closed. This time, there was even more steam, and breathing became even harder. He was sweating profusely. The spirits kept him in a state between fainting and consciousness. The leader started playing the drums, and the elders sang songs together. Jesus recognized the songs from his dreams the night before. The drums resonated in his heart like a heartbeat. The leader gave a teaching about the sweat lodge, that it was bringing people back to being in the womb of their mother, hearing the heartbeats resonating like the drums. He then played another song. Hey, 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 home. Way, way, hey, home. Way, way, hey, yo, way, way, hey, way, hey, way, way, hey, yo. Jesus understood where he was. He saw the 4 men from different races on the beach around the fire. They were the red man, the black man, the white man, and the yellow man. They were naked and had just been created by the Creator. The men were dancing and talking around the fire until they started arguing over a shiny rock one had found. The men fought. Jesus saw the wars between men. He saw 2 babies in a pit, wrapped in cloth, deceased. The leader asked the firekeeper to open the doorway again. Jesus felt great sadness from the men fighting, the wars, and the loss of babies and lives from the fighting. The leader asked for 7 more grandmothers, and the firekeeper brought them in. The offerings were made to the stones, and the doorway was closed. A lot of medicine water was poured on the stones. It became extremely hot in the sweat lodge. The leader made sure everyone was okay, and he proceeded to pass the drum around the circle, asking everyone to share their feelings and play a song if their hearts wanted to. One after the other, people cried, laughed, loved. Jesus shared about the feelings he had when he saw the slave being beaten to death and cried. As he was releasing the energy he had held in for so long, he could not stop crying. The elders sang a song for him. While an elder was sharing and caring about how much she was hurt from the fighting between the tribes, and our boys had been killed during an attack and her daughters were taken, Jesus felt so much sadness in his heart. He cried, sharing the pain of the woman, yet suddenly the pain was replaced by powerful feelings of love. He felt surrounded by a golden light that spread to all the people around him. He saw the 4 men standing around him, at peace, holding hands. He was standing in the sacred fire, the golden light of love spreading around him. Forming a circle around the 4 men were children from each nation of the world holding hands together, hundreds of them. Behind the children, forming another circle, stood their mothers, also holding hands. The great eagle flew over them and smiled. The great peace had come. Chapter 17. The doorway was open. A cup of a delicious liquid was passed around for everyone to take a sip. They called it the water from the sugar bush, the sugar water. Berries were passed around, and they were invited to get out of the sweat lodge when they felt ready. Jesus had so much in his mind and his heart from the visions he had had and the feelings he had experienced. He shared it with the elder that had sat next to him during the feast, asking for guidance. She told him the answers would come to him when he were ready. He had to be patient. She hugged him. Those people had so much love to share. He was the Anishinaabe people. He was still feeling lightheaded from the sweat. So he went and sat under a tree to meditate on what he had seen and felt. The chief came to join him. They sat looking at the trees and listened to the birds singing. After a brief silence, the chief told Jesus this was what life was about: to sit, to watch, and to listen, being just like a tree. to be present in the moment, and to enjoy every instant and give gratitude to all life around us. This was how humans from all nations were meant to live, in harmony with each other, Mother Nature, and all of creation. Jesus reflected on this teaching. He had felt it strongly since he was a child, without being able to put it into words. They talked about God and the Creator, realizing they shared very similar beliefs. Maybe the Creator was God, and God was the Creator. Jesus told the chief about how God had created the earth in 7 days, and the chief told Jesus how Turtle Island had been created, right where they were standing here in Bawating. The chief told Jesus that the Creator was not a man or a woman. The Creator was simply the Great Spirit. Jesus understood that the songs he had heard honoring the Great Spirit were honoring the Creator, or God. Getche manedo, getche shenan, getche shenan, getche manedo. Jesus felt a great connection to God, the Creator, at this moment. He thanked all of creation, saying thank you to the trees, the roots, the beetles, the butterflies, the squirrels, the moose, the rocks, the soil, and the fire. The great eagle had brought him where he needed to be. He thanked him. He felt the spirit of the great eagle standing behind the chief. He wondered if the chief was the great eagle. He wondered if the great eagle was sent by God, or if the great eagle was God. He realized that God was in the trees, the roots, the beetles, the butterflies, the squirrels, the moose, the rocks, the soil, and the fire. He realized that God was in all humans, as they were all part of creation. He realized that all humans and all things were children of God, as they had been created by Him, that they were all connected to God. Jesus had just realized He was the Son of God. Chapter 18. The next day, Jesus headed to the river to pray when the thunderbirds came to visit. After having learned about the thunderbirds from the elders' teachings, Jesus was not scared of the storm like he had been the day he hid under the rocks by the river. He knew the thunderbirds were protecting the people he had met. He put his tobacco down on the ground as an offering and watched the magnificent dance of the thunderbirds in the sky. He could feel the thunder in his heart resonating like the energy he had felt coming from the drums during the sweat lodge. The flashes of lightning all around the sky were such a powerful sight. Jesus thanked his Father for all of creation. The storm calmed down and the sun came through the clouds. Jesus was happy. He was at peace. He prayed all afternoon. He prayed for the creation. He prayed for the people, for the peace between the people. He prayed for all the people to heal in their hearts from their anger. He prayed for love. He prayed for the elders and for the children. He prayed to say thank you and give gratitude. He felt great love in his heart as he was sitting on a rock by the river, listening to the birds, the wind in the trees, and the sound of the water running on the rocks. Small fishes came close to him to investigate. A dragonfly came flying around him and landed on his hand. The squirrels that were circling around him stopped to look at him, curious. Jidamuk. Many birds, like the cardinal, the blue jay, the robins, and even the yellow finches, landed on the trees around him to sing. A snake grass came crawl on his foot and lay there in the sun. A wasp landed on his other hand, and he thanked the wasp for being there. A rabbit hopped around from behind him in the tall grass, while a deer was slowly getting closer to see this man that the animals didn't fear. A white and gray wolf sat in front of him across the river watching him pray. Jesus was in harmony with all living things. The chief was walking down the path to the river when he saw Jesus surrounded by the animals and smiled. He knew the spirits were welcoming the traveler to their land. He offered tobacco to the plants, asking them to take care of the traveler and walk towards Jesus. He had something important to ask him. Chapter 19. The chief sat next to Jesus and asked him if he would come on a journey far away with him when the moon would be full again. He told him he had had a dream that both of them were traveling together and met people from other tribes all around Turtle Island to make a peace treaty between all of the nations. He told him he had had this dream for many years, yet had only seen parts of it. The previous night, the pieces of the dream had finally come together and showed him the full vision of what his mission was. He knew the traveler was also part of the vision, as every dream had become more clear since the traveler's arrival. The chief told Jesus that he would be fasting for 3 days near the Chippewa Falls in a few days with elders and some boys, and that they would be leaving soon. He told Jesus he was fasting with the intention of seeing the peace between all the nations on Turtle Island. He gave a teaching to Jesus, explaining how the fast was also called the vision quest. That the young boys became men after receiving their own vision, one that would show them what their purpose was in this realm. He explained how men and women would fast in the spring and the autumn to pray for the people and Mother Nature. Jesus asked if he could also fast. The chief said it took great preparation to fast, yet if he felt he was ready, he would have to seek guidance of the firekeeper. The firekeeper would be the one to guide him. They prayed together, thanking all the plants and animals they could see and those they could not see. Chapter 20. Jesus added to the sacred fire with tobacco in hand to offer to the firekeeper. As he walked, he could feel the roots of the trees under his feet. He could feel the critters and worms underground crawling through the soil. He could feel the waters flowing deep under his feet. He could feel all the life under him. When he arrived at the sacred fire by the village, the men and women were drumming and singing around it. Jesus joined the circle and someone passed him a drum so he could play with them. He was beginning to know the songs that were sang and could follow along. Hey, hey, oh, hey, hey, ho, hey, ho. The songs and the drums resonated in people's hearts and throughout the vast forest up the mountains. Once the people dispersed, Jesus gave tobacco to the firekeeper and told him he wanted to fast with the chief, the elders, and the young men during their vision quest. The firekeeper asked Jesus what his intention was for fasting. Jesus said he wanted to fast for peace between people all over creation, having felt a great connection to the intention the chief had for fasting. He felt he had to fast to learn what he needed to do to bring peace between the people. The firekeeper told him that the spirits would hear his wishes during the fast and they would guide him. He told Jesus how the fast was practiced by the Anishinaabe people. He told him they would start with the sweat lodge to cleanse before they entered the spirit world through the fast. He told him he would build a small lodge in the forest and protect it with a circle of cedar and other medicines. He told him he would not drink or eat for 3 full days, getting his body in a state between life and death, and that he could access the spirit world. He told Jesus that people would come to support the people fasting by playing the drums, singing, and feasting by eating twice as much as they would during the fast. He asked Jesus if he still wanted to do it. Jesus felt safe and knew the signs were guiding him to fast. He was ready to visit the spirit world to get the guidance he was seeking and to bring his body to the state between life and death. He knew the people supporting the fasters and his Father would protect him. Chapter 21. As they headed north on the lake with their canoes to the Chippewa Falls, where the chief had dreamed they would fast, Jesus saw the raven was following them again. They followed the river inside the land. They could hear a thunder-like sound in the distance, even though the sky was all blue. Jesus asked what that sound was, and the chief said he would soon find out. As they turned around a bend in the river, Jesus saw the waterfalls in the distance. The waters were coming down the hill and smashing from rocks to rocks. The current and the flow of water was so strong, he felt truly amazed at how strong Mother Nature could be, especially after they had paddled up to that point on a very calm river. They paddled as close to the waterfalls as they could. Jesus could feel the vibrations from the turbulence in the waters under his feet in the canoe. He could feel the strength of Mother Nature flow through his body. He could feel the life force of the waters and understood what the elders meant when they told him that water is life. He could feel all the waters, how the water was a moving energy and how it gave life to the fishes, the trees around the falls, the animals in the forest, and even his own life. They paddled up to the rock surface next to the falls to rest their canoes. When Jesus stepped out of the canoe, he felt on his bare feet how much the heat from the sun had warmed up the rock surface. It reminded him of the burning sand from the desert on those few days after he had ran away from the violence, the racism, and the inequalities that were afflicting the land where he came from. He hopped around, until he managed to find some wet dirt he could rest his burning feet on. Everyone laughed. With a smile, the chief thanked him for warning them of how hot the rocks were and showed him to dip his feet in the water and to pour some of it on the ground before stepping on the burning rocks. Two elders started fishing while the young men grabbed the goods in the canoes to climb up the hill next to the falls. The men lifted and flipped the canoes over their shoulders and walked up the hill. The women beat their drums and sang as they helped the elders climb up the hill. Jesus was amazed how efficient the people were moving on both the waters and the land. As they reached the halfway point of the falls, they walked on the rock surface towards the falls to admire the strength of the waters. The waters changed trajectory at that point and turned sideways, following the rock formation on the land. The current was so strong and so loud they could barely hear each other speak. The drums played by the women resonated on the rocks, just like the waters did. Jesus closed his eyes and felt he was in the middle of a thunderstorm. As they continued following the small path up the hill and cliffs, Jesus started hearing nature again. It was amazing how the sound of the waters resonated on the rocks down the hill, yet it was now almost muted by the trees and the rocks that stood between him and the waterfalls. As they reached the top of the falls, Jesus saw in front of him the deep valley from where the river that fed the falls came. The waters were flowing calmly just before the storm that the waterfalls caused after a bend in the river. It was amazing to see the waters being so calm and peaceful, while knowing that just a few steps away it would turn into rapids so powerful that no one in a canoe would manage to paddle through. Chapter 22. They set up camp on the flat piece of land that stood next to the river at the base of the valley just before it transformed into waterfalls. Following his vision, the chief was coordinating everyone to collect the medicines and some firewood, light the secret fire, fish, and cook. The young men started to cut some saplings so they could build wigwams and a sweat lodge. Jesus was asked to walk up the river to collect the grandfathers and the grandmothers the stones for the sweat. The chief told him the big round stones would present themselves to him and he would know which ones to pick. As Jesus was walking by the river, he saw a bear eating berries from a bush on the other side. When the bear saw the man looking at him, he bounced on his front legs and moaned as to welcome the foreign traveler into his land. Jesus found a couple of big round stones laying close by. When he touched them, the wind blew at the top of the trees overlooking the valley, and he heard the leaves whistling. He knew the spirits of the grandmothers and the grandfathers were within those stones. Jesus grabbed as many as he could in his arms and walked back and forth to the camp to bring them all in. The sweat lodge had been built. The firekeeper heated the stones in the fire, and the people had come to fast got ready to enter the lodge after offering their tobacco to the firekeeper. The sweat went similarly as the one Jesus had done last, yet the things he saw were totally different. Everyone was welcome to share their intentions for their fast. As he had came in the lodge with the intention of bringing peace between all the nations on all of creation, Spirit brought him different visions. This time, he saw people standing in circles directing their love and prayers towards the sacred fire. The fire would spread the love that it was accumulating around itself in a large circle area. Sacred fires were being lit all over Turtle Island to spread the love around to all nations. Jesus felt peace, harmony, and love in this very hot and humid sweat lodge. As the sweat ended, the people who were going to fast were invited by the elders to lay down for the night in the large wigwam. That evening, the people who came to the fast to help the helpers had a feast of fishes and berries. Jesus had vivid dreams that night. In the morning, each of the people fasting was invited to find a spot in the forest where they would fast and build their own small wigwam. The elder and the young woman who had guided him on his first night in the with the Anishinaabe people came with Jesus to guide him to his camp. He walked upstream along the river. When he recognized the berry bush where he had seen the bear and the place where he had found the stones, he felt he had to find a place nearby. He looked up and saw a huge oak tree that was taller than the other trees and headed for it. He felt as if the tree was calling him. When he put his hand on the trunk, he felt in his heart that the oak tree would protect him. Jesus felt the tree was talking to him through his heart. The wind blew nearby towards a little opening between the trees. Jesus knew this would be the place for him to fast. The elder and the young woman showed Jesus how to build his wigwam. They offered tobacco to the ground and the trees. They cut maple saplings, layered some more tobacco on the ground, and planted 4 saplings, making sure the doorways were facing east and west so that the spirits could come through. They intertwined the sapling together and attached them with string made of animal tendons, the sinew. They wrapped a couple of saplings around the structure to reinforce it and cover it with the hides they had brought with them. The western door was covered as spirit could come in and out, and the eastern doorway could be covered with the hides to keep the warmth at night. They layered a circle of cedar branches and mountain ash all around the lodge and left some for Jesus to attach and lay inside, where he would spend the next 3 days. The 2 women wished him well and said they would come see him once a day. They told him not to leave the circle of cedar and mountain ash that was layered around the lodge, that the circle was protecting him from the bad spirits that could try to get to him while he was journeying to the spirit world. Chapter 23. Jesus layered a couple of branches of cedar on the ground to make a nice comfy bed. He attached a couple of branches to hang from the ceiling and smudge himself and the lodge by burning the 4 gifts of Mother Earth: the tobacco, the cedar, the sweet grass, and the sage. He prayed and gave gratitude for this journey that his Father had brought him on. He gave gratitude for all living things around him and prayed for the people to be at peace with themselves and with each other. He started hearing the drums, played by the people supporting the fasters, resonating in the distance. He laid on his side and looked at the trees from the doorway of his lodge for the next few hours. He saw many small animals and birds come and go. He thanked them for their presence. Dusk came along with some late season mosquitoes, so he closed the eastern doorway of his wigwam and covered himself with the extra eyes he had. He hung up the dream catcher the chief's partner, the seer, had given him and closed his eyes. The dreams he had that night were visions of the future. He dreamed of plains and fields, of people walking in the desert. He dreamed of a woman bringing him water when he was thirsty. He dreamed of being on a boat fishing, of a storm, and of him walking on the waters. He dreamed of peace between the people, made possible by gift exchanges and dances and ceremonies. He dreamed he was carrying something very heavy on his shoulders. He dreamed he was standing high above ground and watching the people weeping under him while others threw stones at him. He felt pain. He forgave them. He died. He woke up in sweats. The dreams had told him he would have to die to heal the people. He was confused. His father had kept him alive and gave him the will to live just to sacrifice him later. It felt unfair. Chapter 24. He prayed, asking for answers. Anxiety and fear were controlling his mind. His head was spinning so fast he felt he was going to throw up. He felt trapped in his dark, tiny lodge and opened the doorway. As he saw the sun rising next to the large oak tree, he felt a moment of calmness. He watched the sun rising and stayed in this moment of peace for a while. He cried. The tears were coming down his cheeks and his nose was dripping. He took a moment to breathe in the fresh morning forest air through his mouth. He relaxed a bit. Suddenly, something flashed in front of him. He saw an old woman dressed in dark black raven feathers standing between the trees watching him. She only appeared for a second and disappeared. He was afraid. Had the devil come to take his soul? Suddenly, a squirrel appeared in front of his wigwam, coming to investigate, just about a feet or two away from his face. The squirrel watched Jesus for a few seconds before climbing on a tree. Then a butterfly came to visit and landed on the dry leaves in front of him. It had beautiful large orange and black wings. Its wings looked like the dry leaves it had landed on. The butterfly let Jesus admire its wings and stuck its long tongue out to lick the droplets of water from the morning dew on the leaves. The butterfly then took off and offered Jesus its graceful flight. Just where the squirrel and the butterfly had stood, a chipmunk that came to visit. It came right up close on its back legs to watch Jesus lay there, as if to tell him that everything was good. Chipmunk. When Jesus smiled, the chipmunk knew he had delivered a message and took off. Jesus was starting to feel good and realized that the old woman dressed in dark raven feathers was sending all the animals to help him. He realized he had just seen and met Mother Nature. Chapter 25. The drums started resonating in the distance. Doom, doom, doom. He felt the prayers and the songs from the helpers at the camp and felt their hearts. Everything would be good. That afternoon, the two women who had helped him set up camp came to visit, set up his lodge, came to visit and see how Jesus was doing. He told them everything was good. They smiled and walked away. He slept well that night, falling asleep after listening to the drums and the sounds of the forest. The dreams he had were peaceful. The peace came from his heart and spread around him. It came from the love that emanated from his heart. He woke up after sunrise and smiled. The spirits were guiding him in his dreams. He felt hungry and thirsty and a little lightheaded as he tried to sit up and stretch his legs. He managed to crawl out of the lodge and stand up to pee. He wondered where this pee came from, while he had not had anything to drink for a good 2 days now. He sat just in front of the doorway where the squirrel, the chipmunk, and the butterfly had visited him the day before and admired the leaves and the trees dancing in the wind. He smudged by burning the 4 gifts of Mother Earth and to clear his mind. The sage, the cedar, sweetgrass, and the tobacco. After a moment, he went back inside the lodge to lay down, and when the weight of his eyelids came too strong to hold, he closed his eyes and fell asleep immediately. He was woken up by something crawling on his face next to his closed right eye. He put his hand out gently to see what it was, and the caterpillar climbed on his fingers. The caterpillar sat on his knuckles for about an hour. Jesus watched it closely the whole time. He then stretched his hand close to a small maple tree that was just sprouting out of the ground with only 3 green leaves. He felt it was remarkable that its leaves were so big even though the tree was so small. He put the caterpillar on the leaf and watched as the caterpillar crawled at the end of the leaf, fell and landed on the dry leaves on the ground, and slowly crawled back to his hand after a couple minutes. He understood that the caterpillar felt safe with him. He let it crawl on his arm up to the crevice inside his elbow on his long ample sleeves and rest there. Jesus felt a lot of love towards the caterpillar as he watched it sleep. The traveler felt his eyelids being heavy and tried to fight it as he did not want to crush his new companion while he was sleeping. He looked at it for many hours until late in the afternoon, loving the caterpillar. As he was about to fall asleep as well, he felt the caterpillar moving down his arm to his hand and land on the ground, crawl away through the western doorway. He finally let his eyes rest and fell asleep. Jesus had a vision of a woman he had seen in the streets begging in the town of Egypt he had lived in. He saw that with love and care, that woman would become a butterfly and spread her wings. He woke up knowing the caterpillar had come to offer him a teaching. He promised his father he would care for the beggars, as he now knew that one day he would have to go back to where he came from. It suddenly hit him. To bring peace between the people would have to find peace in their hearts first. Chapter 26. It was the end of the 3rd day. The 2 women came to bring Jesus back to the camp. He was weak, yet he managed to bring back all the hides. He left the lodge behind and was told not to look back. Back at the camp, the other people who had fasted were getting ready to go in the sweat lodge again. They offered tobacco to the firekeeper and crawled into the lodge. The sweat started and they shared songs and visions they had during their fast. Jesus shared the story about the animals that came to see him and the caterpillar that he cared for. Many men cried while sharing their visions. The boys who had just fasted and now become men had been guided by the spirits to their purpose and what they would be caring for Mother Earth, the people, and all living things. And how they would be caring for Mother Earth, the people, and all living things. Water from the sugar bush, the maple tree, was shared around the circle. The berries were brought in as well. Outside the sweat lodge, a feast was being prepared. They had a last round of sweat by bringing in many red hot stones. It got so warm and steamy in the lodge that many of them felt dizzy. All of a sudden, Jesus felt a big powerful energy entering his body, like he was being struck by lightning. His whole body started vibrating as he saw the thunderbird come towards him and enter his body. He felt the power of the lightning run through his entire body, all the way to his toes, whilst being surrounded by an immense white light. The thunderbird left just as the leader of the sweat lodge asked the firekeeper to open the doorway for the steam to be released into the air. Jesus had to lay on his side for a few minutes as the people were coming out of the lodge. He managed to crawl out and try to stand on his feet with no success. His legs were shaking as he still felt the overwhelming energy of the thunderbird. Chapter 27. He laid on his back on the dirt ground for a couple minutes before being able to sit. When he was finally able to get up on his knees, he got to sit on a log near the sacred fire. He smiled. He had just met one of the very powerful spirits. The traveler was unsure of what it meant, yet he felt the thunderbird had delivered an important message. The feast was served, and he tasted the succulent juices from every single bite of the food he had. He felt this divine energy of the food going into him as he swallowed. He felt so grateful for the plants and the animals that had given their lives for this meal. All the people who fasted had gone through a journey and were all pretty quiet, while the support people were laughing and singing. They all had such appreciation of the food they were being served. Everyone smiled while eating. They prayed and sang through the night around the sacred fire. In the morning, they cleaned the camp before returning to the village, to Vatican. The chief told Jesus it was time for both of them to travel for peace. The visions that were presented to him during the fast had told him the time had come. They would go meet the tribes from the Longhouse, the Iroquois people. The spirit of the peacemaker had visited the chief in his dream. They would meet with all the Anishinaabe tribes along the way to Iroquois territory, the people from the Longhouse. Chapter 28. As they started their journey to the east along Lake Huron, the chief told Jesus about his visions. He told Jesus that the peacemaker had told him of his own visions, which had set him on his journey to bring peace between the tribes of the Iroquois people, who were at war with each other at the time. They would have to travel by canoe across the Great Lakes. Their journey would take months, if not years, as there were many other nations living on Turtle Island they would have to meet. They set up camp for the night. Jesus woke up at sunrise, hearing heavy footsteps in the bush around his wigwam. He could hear the heavy breathing of a bear just as the beast started running towards his wigwam. He felt the bear's power through his lodge, transforming into the thunderbird as it entered his body. His limbs contracted when the lightning shock flowed through his entire body. He felt great pain and weakness as it lasted for a couple minutes. The thunderbird left his body and he rolled on his side, completely exhausted. After calming down his body and mind for a few minutes later, the thunderbird came into his body again and again. Jesus fainted in a state between life and death. Afterward, Jesus' journey will continue in the next book. I've got many more stories in mind and a heart to tell, to follow Jesus' journey from 20 to 30 years old around Turtle Island and maybe elsewhere around Mother Earth. As I take the journey myself, I will meet many people and hear of prophecies that will inspire those books. Chimigwech, and see you in the next book. To follow my journey adventures that inspired the next novels in the Messenger series, make sure to follow me on Facebook for my blog, Guillaume McMartin, and subscribe to Planet Karma on YouTube for my vlog, and for my wife and I vlog on YouTube, Anipu and Boo. And we also have guided affirmations to allow love and happiness in your life that we have recorded, and you can listen to them, and within a few days, like you'll feel that love flow through you, and you can listen to it for free, download. So I'll put the link as well, so you can reach out to that. So with love, Guillaume McMartin, one who walks with a strong heart, which is my spirit name that was given to me by elders. Don't forget to leave a review for how you felt about the book on Amazon or in the comments below. And whether it's positive or negative, it's really appreciated. Thank you, Miigwech. I want to do acknowledgements. Thank you, Miigwech. Merci, danke, xie, gracias, nyawen. To all the people I've met on my journey on this beautiful planet of ours, and to all the people I still have to meet. I love you all. I also want to say a big Miigwech and Zagin to all the elders, the ancestors, the eagles, the ox, the ravens, the cranes, the trees, and all the small animals and insects that have guided me on my journey. Without your help, I wouldn't be where I am today. I'm so grateful for your guidance. And this is funny because this book was inspired by my journey, and like maybe 80-90% of the content of this book, I've lived through it on that journey that I've taken and experience that I've had in my life. And somebody read that book who had been struggling for many years, and then he really like dug deep in researching Jesus and lost texts from Bibles and prophecies, and from his research from over 100 manuscripts that he sent me, like a list of them, he said, what you wrote in your book is like 80-90% of what my research has shown me, which is the journey that was given to me. So here's a bit about me, about the author. After letting people bully me all his life, all my life, I thought I was a failure, that I was worth nothing, and I wanted to kill myself just 7 years ago now. At that moment, a voice in my heart told me that it was not over for me and that I had purpose. So that's when I went on a journey. I don't need to read it, I know my story. I went on the journey to find my purpose after that, and through like social and entrepreneurship and just wanting to make money, and like and then becoming an investor, an impact investor. I was led to a point where I was being successful, and that I had let people, that was on me, that I let people bully me all my life. Now all of a sudden I was seeking the attention and the respect of the people, so my ego and my greed took over me, and I eventually lost everything I had because I was like throwing my money around, and I lost everything. And this is where my spiritual journey started. For many years, like started being through addictions, and now being addicted to going to motivational and inspirational events, seeking answers, and creating my own even. I got to a point where I just sat in the forest and meditated almost every day, going at 5 a.m. walk in nature, and this is where I found true peace, was in the forest. Like this, and just I was praying and I was meditating, and when I opened my eyes, I saw trash in the creek, and my heart told me to come back and pick it up. So I came back with bags, and I picked up that trash, cleaned the forest. Somebody saw me exiting the forest with bags of trash, and he said, "This is really inspiring, I want to do it too." And so I started recording videos of cleaning forests and creeks for 2 years, and it became the Planet Karma movement, and I had people in China, Russia, Germany, UK, Canada, US, send me pictures of them and videos, and saying doing the same thing, saying they were inspired by the videos I had made. And that's where I led my journey, going on a little vacation in Quebec at my dad's cottage, and going canoe camping in the north with family. And when we drove to the reservation, which I don't like the name, the native village, Kitsganzibi, I saw 2 young women posters of missing women, and it hurt my heart seeing that, and my heart was telling me I had to do something about it. And Oh, it's Big Daddy long leg on my feet. So that's when I was praying about it and went through that journey on the canoe campaign. That's where the Thunderbirds, which I didn't know back then, those big thunderstorm came, and like it is in the book, and I was guided a few days later by a giant raven that flew in front of me while I was bicycling in the forest. Told me to go west towards the mountain, and that's where I started my journey on my bicycle, which ended up lasting 2 years, and ended up living with the Anishinaabe people for 1.5 years in Northern Ontario and learning a lot from them, and where I started writing that novel as well. While I became firekeeper and kept the fire for a whole winter and living in teepees a whole winter in like Sault Ste. Marie and in the north where there's a lot of snow. So that book came from that, and I started writing a second book and need to go back at it when I get back my laptop that I left in the north, and now traveling with my wife around the world essentially to spread that message of love, harmony, and peace, and help people just by being like I was really pushing it and traveling for peace between all nations, but realize that there's we're all the same nations. I know I showed my shoes during the call when I was talking about the red man, the yellow man, the white man, and the red man is the black man is the 4 colors of creation, which you see in the medicine wheel, which represents the four like colors of creation, and when all those nations would make peace, this is when the peace would come. And so I was traveling for peace between all nations, but realized that when we see different nations, that separates us while we're all one. So I kind of modified that journey, and I was spreading love and peace, and now realize that essentially just being the love that we are, if I can lighten it up in the people, because it's already there, help the people this way. And this is why we're organizing a huge transformational event, my wife and I, with there's going to be acrobats, and we have a friend who's like who's been on Broadway and Disney Tokyo that's going to come sing and perform, and the theater, a play that we've written, and there's going to be like healing foods from chefs that are friends. It's going to be a very, very transformational experience with tons of transformational activities, and we want to bring this event all around the world, spread love that way by just awakening the love in the people's hearts, so that they can experience it and then let it flow through them to the people around them. So that's what my wife and I, that we've been working on, that I just met a couple months ago during my journey, and now we're traveling this journey together, and it's very beautiful. So if you want to follow our journey, follow us on YouTube at Anipo and Boo, and I'll put the link as well. And you can follow this Planet Karma here, and where it's more about protecting Mother Earth and the people. And what else? I believe that's it. I will continue. I show you some pictures of me for real, camping in the forest for a couple of days, just planting and being close to land and around sacred fire, and on my journey on my bicycle, and at a powwow, my first powwow, dancing. So thank you so much. You want to follow that journey, know everything, subscribe to our email list, and we'll send you as well, and we created tons of stuff to help you allow love and happiness to flow through you, like turn on your light, so that you can just be the light for the people in the darkness, and escape that darkness, like I did when I wanted to kill myself 7 years ago, just with hope in my heart. So thank you so much for being here with me today, and I love you all. Big love.